or Fast and Furious 8 at the Dome. So, I just love that they love movies, and you guys know so much, and you guys are amazing to talk to, so I'm just gonna go into it.
And she knows, but when we were actually, my little introduction to, before knowing Rowan and seeing movies with her, we were actually shooting this film in Humboldt County, and we were kind of shooting all nights, and it was like becoming almost a zombie existence for ourselves. And it was pretty grueling shooting schedule that Laura, Kirsten, and I would kind of hang out in our spare time, and we found Rowan on the Disney Channel and became obsessed with her show and watched it in any of our time off. So there's a weird parallel. We must have a psychic connection.
It's very funny to me that you guys were watching my children's sitcom during the making of this film.
Like, it's so weird. I'm like, well, I had no choice. We were making this.
Yeah, you guys had to lighten it up.
Well, there was some kind of
Just loud.
I don't know.
Seem loud to you guys?
Oh, you guys are good.
Just to me. It works, right? Okay.
Okay, let's just talk.
Okay.
So you guys grew up in Northern California, and you guys grew up right near the Redwoods. I'm curious as to why, for your first film, you felt like you guys had to talk about the Redwoods and touch on that, and how that sort of struck a chord years later, and you guys decided to make that your first project in film.
Well, I would say, to give a little insight into this, as you were saying, we grew up, my sister and I grew up on the edge of an old growth redwood forest in a place called Aptos, which is right near Santa Cruz. And to kind of put it in perspective, our father was a mycologist, he's a mushroom expert, and we were around a bunch of kind of botanists and people that were spending a lot of time in nature. And we would just walk out, down the street and go into this forest with these very large trees. And actually, in this old kind of old growth forest, there was the remnants of logging mills, which we didn't know at the time, that we would just play in these kind of decayed old mills that were kind of preserved in this. I think it's a national park, actually. So flashing forward years later as adults, Laura and I would often say to each other, there's just, this weird, in growing up around those trees, you just have this weird sense of scale and kind of, you feel so small in terms of your place in the universe. And I think we were very aware of that feeling. And, we started writing the script in 2011, and for whatever reasons, when we first decided we wanted to make a film, we started with the idea of wanting to capture the feeling that those trees had made us experience. And in that, we started researching, and there's many artists, whether it's Ansel Adams or John Steinbeck, and the consistent consensus was always, they're impossible to capture because their scale truly is so large. And we actually shot in Humboldt County, which is about 7 hours north of where we grew up, where the trees are beyond huge. To put it in perspective, there can be taller than the Statue of Liberty. I think some of them are over 360 feet, 400 feet high. They're the largest living organisms on the planet, and they only exist in a small strip of land here, basically from kind of, Big Sur up to the very Oregon border, but they're not really in Oregon. And we have cut down 95% of the old growth, so there's only 5% of these trees that, a lot of the trees have been around since the Roman Empire. And I think Laura and I were always kind of pivoting on that knowledge, because also when we were growing up, there was a lot of fearless people that were trying to save these trees from being cut down. That was a big movement that happened where people were kind of living in these trees and putting their life on the line to save them. And they did, in fact, save a lot of those trees. But I think we had a little bit of that kind of psychically in us, that, growing up there. But, I think when we started writing, it was about this kind of passion for fleshing out our questions about our own life and our own relationship to destruction, whether or not we were partaking in it or not. I think just being a human on this planet, we have impact, whether it's we make art or we make lots of garbage or we do both. We're leaving something behind. And I think we kind of started with those questions and wanting to capture something about those trees, because truly those trees know more, they understand something that we don't. I think the human existence is flawed, and this film's an exploration of that. It's beautiful, but it's also flawed.
Do anything?
No, I'll go to the next question. Oh, I forgot one last thing. We realized that last night that we used to rent our videos, actually, because we were talking about how we love film. And I forgot about this, but where we grew up, the video store was actually in a hollowed out redwood, and the children's section was inside of it. And we rent all of, like, our early memories of seeing films were rented from that video store. So I then thought, well, maybe that's where it all started.
A lot of this film takes place in sort of quiet, or it takes place in these like hallucinogenic sequences where we aren't really sure what's like reality or what's in Teresa's head. How did you guys approach like communicating that to Kirsten or to the other actors when they didn't have too much like dialogue in the script to work with?
Well, each actor was very different on the film, but we wanted to cast people that had a very intuitive form of acting, something that felt very natural. That started from Kirsten because she was our lead actress and the first person included in this project. And we needed people that could be in her landscape and her methodology so they wouldn't kind of kick you out of the story. Because if you're in Teresa's head, it's not like you want the character suddenly to be, you know, more. I mean, sometimes people are more overt actors, and Kirsten's really quiet and very natural, and she's kind of like an emotional vessel. And because so much of the script was descriptive and it's about what Teresa's doing and what she's interacting with and it, you know, her own ways of trying to connect. She's very disconnected from all the characters in the story. So things like her touching the wall are very important, or things like her rubbing her hand on the floor. Her body is one of the largest ways that she communicates. So it's a real physical performance. So it started with Kirsten working with her, she doesn't call her an acting coach, I wouldn't either, but she is kind of a psychological coach, yeah. And she teaches Kirsten through dreams. So they would go through the script and really find ways to uncover feeling in each of the actions Teresa had to perform. And then Kate and I came in and then we did it all together. And that was, you know, it was a long process, but it was very fruitful. And then going to set, we only had 31 days to shoot the movie, and Kirsten's in all of the shots. So we really had to, you know, have a plan. However, plans don't always work. So as soon as we got on set and we were, like, you know, artistically inspired, the biggest thing that we did is, you know, our plans are all out the window, our shot list is out the window. What are we going to do that makes this film what it is, and how do we make it as special as it can be? So we would try to keep the actors separate from that conversation. So they never really knew what the film looked like. We wouldn't let them look at a monitor except for maybe 1 or 2 times. So they didn't have an awareness to the visual nature of the movie. And then we would pretty much choreograph everything with Kirsten that morning and spend a lot of time with her. So the biggest example of that maybe is the kitchen bathroom sequence where she goes in and out between when she's rolling her 5 joints. And that was, you know, a very tedious, arduous process to nail that and to really hit all the marks and make it as effortless as it could be. But she also played that, you know, in her mind it's all really happening. So in answering, I think, further answering your question, the way it's written is we write it like it's all happening. And in truth, it is it's a psychological experience. Essentially, this film starts, you start and her entire world changes, and it's a progression of going inward. So really, what we're asking for the journey is to be, you know, we're asking for a viewer to kind of let go and go inside someone's mind. And I think the analogy that we had made, which was, you know, I've talked about this, but we had read this beautiful kind of essay where this writer that loves trees said that the deepest part of a forest is the most analogous to the deepest part of the human consciousness. And the more that he refers to this imaginary space as green chaos. The more that we move away from it, the more we're disconnected from humanity. And I think in Teresa's case, she's trying to reconnect to this natural spot. And in doing that, the
the question that she's posing, I think, in her psychological journey is that there are questions and that she won't have the answers. And she's fleshing out what is really like an existential crisis. What's the meaning of life? What is my impact on these other people? If I open up one door, who am I? What am I capable of? And in doing and asking an actor to do all that, and especially we were asking Kirsten, I think, specifically really to really show her inner thought process. We had to approach it like everything's happening kind of in real time, in a very, almost like, as Laura said, it was very described what was happening, but it only became, I think the mental state is the finished film. I think from Kirsten's process, I mean, Kirsten would tell you herself that she almost felt like she was a forest nymph that had been cut off from the forest and she's just trying to return. So she had to find her own way of understanding Teresa. I think when you're working with actors, it's really important to embrace their creativity and learn from their kind of their emotional connection to what you write. And if you write something, to be free enough to let go of some of your kind of preconceived ideas. One of the things that we did with Kirsten before we started shooting is we took her to see California condor, which is a bird that Laura and I love. And when we were young, we would donate our money, like any school money, to try to save this bird. And it was like, I think 7 left in the wild. And they're these kind of primordial, amazing creatures that have the largest wingspan of any bird on the planet. And now there's, I think, around 300 in the wild because of people's efforts to save them. And, you know, we had done something where we had kind of donated some money to help this bird. And they said, hey, do you want to come in? We have, normally you don't get to go up close to them because they don't want human imprinting because they're trying to get them back in the wild. But they had a bird named Dolly that can never go back. She had such an injury, it was like, that's just not going to be possible. So they said, do you want to come and have the opportunity to be up close with one? And we thought at the time, let's take Kirsten. And we all went, and we were doing it in preparation for this role, and we kind of went to this small, weird little place to meet this bird. We all walked into the room, and the bird's, just to put in perspective, a 9 feet wingspan. When a bird opens their wings, it's huge. And it was still kind of a baby, so California condors get big, red, vulture looking heads, but this was still like all covered in black feathers. Dolly was. And we all stood in front of her, and we were just kind of mesmerized. And we all had, I think, the feeling that you have when you stand in front of one of these giant redwoods. And what's interesting is actually condors natively lived in redwoods because the only trees big enough for them to have their nests were either redwoods or they would have to go in caves. And I remember saying to Kirsten at the time, just imagine that we live our lives every day, you know, whatever. We go to Starbucks, I don't know, whatever we're doing, going, you know, building an IKEA desk. And there's like a handful of people that wake up, climb up redwoods, go in these birds' nests, try to save the babies, or go back down, bring the baby in for an operation, go back up. And they know that this incredible creature is just on a tightrope of existence. And they're spending their entire lives trying to save it. And the rest of the world doesn't care. Or they don't know about it. And it's just like, to me, it's the sensitivity of that and those people. And Teresa's sensitive. So, for example, there's a scene where she kind of sees, we call them magic lights. And there's not really, I'm bringing this story up because there's not really an explanation in the script why she sees them. Like, some people might say, well, is it because of what she's putting in her, you know, like joints or, you know, whatever happened before that? Right, but it's in the film, if you watch it, you know, she actually does experience those the first time before really ever taking anything. So for us, it's more about a sensitivity that's then heightened by her own kind of exploration of her mind. And I think what's interesting about this film is it's very much through her own agency. Her self-exploration is through her agency. So, I don't know, I forgot how this answered all these questions, but I was trying to.
No, I like that. One thing I was really fascinated by, I first saw the film on Monday and then I watched it again last night, And the one thing I can't get over is the way that Kirsten uses her body, especially at the very end when her body starts getting sort of manic and it's like forming into the redwood.
Right.
Could you guys elaborate on just the way that she was like using her body?
We kind of thought that, I always think of the story, now that I've seen it 50 times at least, that there is a feeling that there's a creation myth that happens with this character. And she's born out of this landscape, and as Kate was saying earlier, she is sensitive to the beauty of the environment, but also to the destruction. And when her main thing is to get back to those trees and to get back to nature, she, actually the only very literal line that is said in this film that's very reflective of an emotional state is her saying, I didn't want to go back to, this idea of humanity when she had been previously lost in the woods. So I feel like that, is an invitation to the audience to say, I'm going on a journey of someone, getting back to nature and to reconnecting. So by the time you go through her journey and she makes it to that tree, it's, one of the most beautiful things that I think that we shot was when her body kind of blends into the bark. And that is a very powerful symbolic thing because her body is so organic. And something that I think is very safe about this film is that it deals with psychedelia, however, it is very much done with the human hand. So we cared so much that it would be done with, in-camera shooting. There aren't special effects except for the house levitating. So everything that you see, we shot. Kirsten might not have been aware of the lights or what those look like, but they are happening in camera. Or when she's levitating in the woods and when she falls, that's really her body in those trees. And that's actually a really crazy thing to think. So we had to bring in a choreographer, and we worked with her on different ways to communicate what a body would feel like as a tree, or this idea of this sublimity that happens in the end moment. And Kate and I, when we had, this actually happened after that, but I think we knew. We had a great poster of burning these ecstasy of St. Teresa that we hung on the wall and editing, which is, uncovering that idea of this woman being, it's almost like this idea of this woman's pure ecstasy and this penetration of feeling. It's actually, I think it's the penetration of God on her, but our version is nature taking over. And that's, from a woman's eyes, and that's where we come in and say, the story's made by a woman about a female character, and we really cared about her agency and about showing her through her own self-reflection and not through the people around her.
We were talking a lot about this week, just how rare it is to actually see a movie that was made by women, starring a woman that's actually just about thinking, a woman who's thinking and exploring. And I think a lot of that is you see that more because the film sort of doesn't exist in a single time period and it doesn't exist over like a set course of days.
Right.
And I think that lets her think more and stream of consciousness more. How did you guys approach writing? Because I know that you guys originally wrote the script in a different period, 100 years before. How did you guys get to where it was now?
Well, I think, it's interesting. If you know us personally, it would make a lot of sense to say we wrote this, the starting version of this was written 100 years ago. One of the main reasons I realized in doing that was mostly just fleshing out. We use kind of logging and kind of is a subliminal thread in the film. And Laura and I actually had to live in that research, I think, for a year and a half, honestly. Like, we had at some point in collection, we could have probably done, like, we had, it felt like thousands of these crazy old photos that, like, we would just do a lot of research. And I think we were just living in somehow, like, I think the pain of that, but also knowing that there's no right or wrong. I mean, like, listen, like, this is part of human existence. Stuff gets cut down and made into things. We're all participating in that. So it wasn't about judgment of it necessarily, but we were living in, I think, somehow the destruction of that. And at the time that we wrote it, we were kind of fleshing through that. So when we decided to set it in the contemporary time, we let go of all that. And it became like this subliminal thread. And I think the way that we ended up approaching time was much more through, if this is a story of someone's interior life, And we've been talking about this. You don't always share your interior world with people. I think one of the biggest things that, it's kind of like when you watch the news and you see something really horrible and you're like, why did they do it? I want to know why they did it. And then everyone around them's like, we never saw this coming. But I mean, there is, and then people say, well, how's that possible? And it's like, I'm like, how's that possible? But there is something true about you can have an entire inner world that you never share with anyone. I mean, so I think in a sense, we were trying to then figure out if your story is ruled by your inner life, how does time work? Especially too, because we're also starting the story off with a complete moment of grief. She does this beautiful act. She helps her mother kind of leave this world. In a sense, we felt it's very selfless and giving, but it's also an extreme loss. It's also finding out something about yourself. She grapples with that decision, even though it's the right decision, it's still something that she struggles with. So I was just going to say time shifts. When you have a loss like that, I think time changes the way you look at time. We use logic to organize time and to understand it, but memory and emotion and history isn't really logically organized, I don't think.
And nature isn't either. So the idea that if trees are sensitive to nature, her time is as slow as nature's, and she interacts without. When her mother dies at the beginning of the film, we always think everything shifts for her. So she's kind of trapped in this cycle that she can't break. It's interesting. Johnny makes her smile on the porch. That's so heartbreaking to me because it's one brief flicker that something could go right for her, and it's very fleeting, and it doesn't lead to a good place. It just leads to somewhere worse. But you do see the idea that she can't get out of this heaviness, and I think a lot of people can relate to that through their own loss, and the idea that your world kind of stops when something very tragic happens, and your understanding of the day-to-day or the constructs that we live our lives, that we wake up, we go to work, we go to school, all those things kind of don't matter as much. So it's really fleshing out what it's like to feel things on a deeper level, and the idea that if we put too much effort into understanding time, then maybe we get, it's too logical. So if the story's about illogic and about the mind, then we have to remove time, and we have to remove simple things like, people always ask what's in the poison, like the bile. And I say, hey, that's up to you guys. We would say it's an unnamed poison, but you could watch this movie however you choose to. And
don't worry, my dad has asked me 1,000 times what's in the bile, what's in the bile.
But I do think what it does is, if you're free from asking questions that are too specific, you can be more in the stream of conscious narrative. You can say, I'm going to let my normal structure of thought process go out the window, and I'm just going to experience something. And that's a powerful thing to do. Sometimes I say watch this movie a second time only because once you experience it this way, it's so different upon experiencing it another way, because you'll be even more free of kind of the journey of the character.
Yeah, when I saw it the first time, I felt like I was very slowly going through her thoughts, and when I saw it again last night, I texted you guys after, that it went by so fast.
So fast. So it's it's like a roller coaster. And I don't even know why that happens. It's just kind of like open something in you. It's like retraining your brain to watch something that maybe feels a little different.
She's saying to open it up. If you guys have any questions.
Yeah. You.
How did you guys originally, in the beginning of your process of making the film, come across Kirsten Dunst and bring her on board, and how did she get on board, and what was that whole thing like?
Well, Kirsten's a very dear friend of ours, and that obviously would be the worst answer for you, but the actually very wonderful for us, because it was like three sisters making this film. I have to tell you, our set life was very fun. Even though, we were doing very hard things, we had a very deep bond that made our lives.
There was a lot of 80s music in our time off. I love singing.
So they asked us for
Disney
Disney Channel.
They asked us for iTunes. They're like, do you have any special behind-the-scenes content? When they put out Ghost Story, they put David Lowery's first film up and blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, no, we don't have that. And then all I thought that we had from on set was really embarrassing videos from our like shared dressing room, like Kirsten's dressing room, us being wacky. And I was like, there's no way those are going out in public. But you know, it was nice. We asked her, she didn't have to say yes. I mean, actors are very protective of, you know, she says no to everything. So, you know, we went to her more from a theory and saying we respect each other, and I think she always thought what we did was artistically inspiring, and I felt comfortable in asking her.
Yeah, and it's so fun to, I think, you know, you learn about yourself every time you make something. You know, this is our first film, and I knew, you know, people are like, well, you know, how do you feel? Do you want to make another one? And I thought, oh, it's like falling in love. As soon as you make one, it's like you never want it to end. But the other part about it that was interesting is that something about the way we work is very much as a, you know, family in a sense. Like Laura and I have probably very little boundaries between us, and we can be so free with ideas, and we don't judge each other, even if an idea is, there's really no bad idea, but sometimes like I might have a really bad idea. And we kind of just, but we're not worried to tell each other. And I think with Kirsten, it was, and everyone we worked with on the film, it became a family. And you could take away the layer, because essentially you're asking, it's so weird, you're asking someone, when you ask someone to act and like they're performing and doing something in front of you, it's really vulnerable. And I think one of the things that I was very aware of was like, oh, like that would be very difficult for me to do. So this you have to have a lot of trust in people, and I think if you're open to that trust, it kind of just makes it more like a family. So we were already coming at it with having spent years really knowing her. But I think there was certainly an evolution of our relationship from making this film, because it was also, you know, in a sense too, it was also like three women. It's not that often that you're like, a woman's going to be in every scene of the film. I mean, Kirsten's only not in 2 scenes, to put in perspective. So just so you guys, like, to take that further home, that means she's on set every day for 16 hours.
Also isolated.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's really about kind of, you know, surrounding her with, we have a supporting cast that's incredible, but then she had to be kind of emotionally available all the time.
Any more?
You? Up there? Yeah, right here. Blanchard. So Tom Ford and other designers have directed movies. Tom Ford, they often hire costume designers. Tom Ford went so far as to say you know Tom Ford because he's in my movies. What was your relationship with Christy Whittemore, the costume designer that you worked with, and your decision to credit yourselves as co-costume designers? What parts did you take? What parts did she take?
Well, this is from past experience. We worked on costumes on the film before, and we made ballet costumes in Black Swan. And so we have the backstory of what the costume world is, and that's very, I mean, as any title, any key, you know, for like any key head, any key department head, it's a huge job. So we knew that, you know, a lot of Kirsten's costumes were written into the script, so we had ideas about them, but at the same time we knew that was something that we would have to have someone contribute to. We couldn't take that on, but we also would have a huge creative voice in that, because we feel that costume and clothing is a voice for us as creators. So we looked for the right person, someone that would be open to collaborating with us, and someone that we would be open to collaborating with, so there could be a mutual trust, that we trusted each other's taste, and we trusted the idea that, you know, clothing meant a lot in this film, even though it's more subdued. So working with Christy was just wonderful. She's the most wonderful human being, and her positivity is, you know, actually was an asset on set, especially when, you know, Kirsten's in the woods freezing for, you know, 2 weeks. She goes to the hospital. It's like all the stuff. So Christy's the one that's literally putting the robe on Kirsten, making sure she's like warming up and, you know, doing all those things. So she's a real leader in that sense. And really, it's just, I don't know if there's a reason to do it the way we did. It just is what happened. And the way that we all worked together, and it just felt natural. There wasn't a real choice in it. We just
I mean, I knew when we were starting out we would do it on some level. I didn't think we would do the whole thing. And so it really just came down to finding someone that we wanted to collaborate with, you know, and it's hard because we work so much as a unit, you know. I think, for example, a great part of the journey is in this, the costumes in this film are much more about a reflection of her interior state. If we're in her mental landscape, they're not really objective. Hence, if you really look through it, 1 minute she's in one version of the sequin dress, then we go deeper in her mind, the dress slightly changes. By the third time you see it, it's slightly changed. Some people notice that, others don't.
They're all downstairs.
But I was going to say the slip is a good example, like even working with Christy on that, which was, you know, we started with the mother slip, and as the slip becomes more organic and kind of frayed in the forest's mental state. But I remember Christy on set, we had amazing agers, and all of them were being like, you know, Christy was overseeing them being painted, and you know, it was a very artistic process, and that's something usually Laura and I would be very involved and hands-on. But because Christy's so amazing, it's like she was just taking the reins and going. So we just had a great collaboration, and I really, you know, enjoyed every second of it. But I mean, in a sense, it's like, you know, if you're a director, you care about every part of the film. So it's like, for me, it would be hard for my, going into it, I don't know if I could have divorced myself from that so much, but I didn't, it was more about a collaborative effort.
One more question. You?
Yeah, bands like Wire and Suicide and Gary Newman are kind of rare in a soundtrack, and it definitely adds a character to the film. What led you to make those choices?
Oh, well, we thought Keith should have really good taste in music. And it really was, you know, it was so interesting. Music plays such a cool role in this film because nothing fits. So when we started with the score, we couldn't edit to temp music. We had to build a score that we could edit to. And it took from November 2015 to July 2016. 15, 16, so almost a full year to make it what it was. And I look back on it and say, oh, it's so interesting, but you know, the idea of this mental landscape looking so particular and needing to feel like Teresa, the score kind of had to be its own thing too. It had to be very reflective of the singular voice. That's where the harp comes in, the bird call, the whistling. Peter's wife, the composer, Peter Rayburn, she's a soprano and she sings in it. But then, so when we went to the other side, you know, you have this very natural score that fits Teresa, and I think speaks a lot for her, and it tells a lot of her story. On the other side, you have Keith, and Keith is the opposite of Teresa. He knows some of her interior, you know, problems, but he is unburdened by any of it, and he has no rules. And so we kind of likened even his costume to when we made up a character for him with Chrissy, we were saying he needs to be like Robbie Robertson from the band. And then, you know, then these certain songs, like Something Steely, I think we were attracted to, you know, the Galaxy 500 song. It was the only song that worked on that porch with that scene with Johnny where, you know, they have the birthday candle. And Wire was the first source cue because we listened to it on set all the time, Heartbeat, which is what Teresa, it's playing when she's in the car and goes into the party. And it's kind of like this amazing thumping sound that kind of drives you. And those two moments probably just define the rest of the other source cues that came in. The Gary Newman was exciting because it's so abrupt and Teresa turns it off. So it's fun to see how this music is so representative of Keith and this freedom and kind of his seductive quality, and then how it contrasts to her.
I think that's the last question that they're telling me we have time for, but thanks so much. Thank you, Kate and Laura, for making this movie.
Thank you for being here, friend. Thanks, Rowan.
Thanks, you guys.